Right around the second week of August, most gardeners quietly give up on the season. They look at their beds, check the calendar, and decide it's too late to plant anything new. Nobody ever told them that August is actually one of the richest sowing windows of the year, and skipping it means handing back nearly 3 months of color you could have had. Today I'm giving you 15 flowers built for an August sowing. Flowers that come up faster in warm soil and peak in October and November, right when everything your neighbors planted in May is fading. Exact varieties, zone guidance, and the small mistakes that quietly ruin it. If this is your first time here, welcome to Golden Vault Garden. Hit subscribe before we start. Let's get into it. Before we get to the individual flowers, a few ground rules that apply across this whole list, so I'm not repeating myself 15 times. On soil, most of these flowers actually perform better in average, even lean ground than in a heavily enriched bed. Resist the urge to work compost into every planting area. A number of these plants come from meadows, scrubland, and dry hillsides where the soil never did them any favors, and that's exactly how they like it. Rich soil tells a plant that life is easy, and a comfortable plant spends its energy on leaves instead of flowers. We'll flag the exceptions as we go. On watering, the one period that matters is germination. Keep the top inch of soil consistently moist from the day you sow until the seedlings appear. After that, most of this list is far more forgiving than people expect. And overwatering an established seedling causes more trouble than underwatering ever does. On depth, the single most common mistake home gardeners make is burying seed too deep. Unless I tell you otherwise, a 1/4 inch is the right depth, and several flowers on this list want nothing more than surface contact. Deeper is not safer. Deeper usually just means slower, or nothing at all. One more thing before we start. You don't need special tools for any of this. A trowel, a watering can, and a warm afternoon are the entire supply list. Now, the flowers. Flower number 1, zinnias. If I could only sow one flower in August, it would be this one. No contest. The reason is soil temperature. A zinnia seed dropped into cool spring ground sits there waiting. Put that same seed into August soil that's been holding heat for weeks, and you'll have seedlings up in 4 to 5 days. Warm soil isn't a hurdle for zinnias. It's the signal they've been sitting around for. For compact plants that branch heavily and hold their shape without flopping, look at the Profusion series. Profusion Fire, Profusion Orange, and Profusion White are all award winners. They stay around 12 to 14 inches, and they bloom continuously without deadheading. For larger cut flowers, 4 to 5 inches across, the Bennery's Giant series is the one to grow. Bennery's Giant Coral, Wine, and Scarlet reach 18 to 24 inches tall. One important note, don't heavily feed your zinnia bed. Zinnias in rich soil grow tall, floppy, and much more prone to powdery mildew, which is the #1 threat to a late-season zinnia planting. Average, well-drained soil is correct here. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, barely covered, and thin to 12 inches for the Profusion types, and 18 inches for the Giants. Crowded zinnias get mildew. Properly spaced zinnias get gorgeous. That thinning step isn't optional. Good for us to zones 5 through 10 for an August sowing. Flower number 2, Cosmos. Cosmos carry an undeserved reputation as filler, when really this plant does its best work under a very specific kind of neglect. Cosmos evolved in Mexican scrubland, dry, lean, poor ground. Sow it into rich soil and you'll get an enormous plant with beautiful foliage and almost no flowers, because the plant doesn't feel any reproductive pressure. Sow Cosmos in August into average to lean soil, skip the fertilizer before sowing, and skip nitrogen during the season. That's the entire trick. The Sensation series, especially Sensation Mixed, gives you white, pink, carmine, and deep magenta on airy plants 3 to 4 feet tall. For containers or smaller beds, the Sonata series stays under 2 feet. The variety Rubenza gives you a deep ruby red that's stunning in a fall border, and it's worth seeking out if you're in zones 6 through 9. Sow on the surface or at a 1/4 inch, and thin to 12 to 15 inches once seedlings reach 3 inches tall. Good for USDA zones 3 through 10. Flower number 3, sunflowers. A lot of gardeners believe sunflowers are a spring-only flower, and that if you missed May or June, the window is closed. That belief costs people real color every single year. A late summer sowing isn't a fallback. For some varieties, it's actually the better choice. Seed dropped into August. Ground comes up in 5 to 7 days, skipping the sluggish start that a cool spring sowing goes through. An August sown sunflower gets moving fast, and by late September, when the rest of the garden looks worn out, yours are just reaching their peak. For August sowing, Stick to faster maturing varieties in the 55 to 70-day range. Autumn Beauty matures around 60 days and gives you branching plants in bronze, burgundy, gold, and cream. The ProCut series, ProCut Gold and ProCut Orange, gives you single-stem cut flowers in about 60 days. Sunrich Lemon and Sunrich Orange are bred for fast production and peak around 60 to 70 days. One practical note, freshly sown sunflower seed attracts squirrels and birds, so cover the area with light row cover or window screen for the first 10 days. Sow 1 inch deep, 6 inches apart, and thin to your variety's recommended spacing. Good for us as zones 2 through 11. Flower number 4, marigolds. Not every marigold works for an August sowing. African marigolds, the big pom-pom types, take 70 to 90 days to bloom, which can be cutting it close before frost in shorter season zones. French marigolds bloom in 50 to 55 days, and that's your correct tool here. Look at the Bonanza series, Bonanza Flame and Bonanza Harmony, the Hero series for exceptional heat tolerance and non-stop blooms, or the Aurora series, compact and completely unfussy. Here's something most gardeners are never told. Marigold roots release a compound called alpha-terthionyl, a natural deterrent against harmful root knot nematodes in the soil. An August planting gives you blooms now and better soil going into next spring, 2 returns on 1 small seed packet. The scent of the foliage also discourages aphids and whiteflies nearby, so planted alongside late-season tomatoes, peppers, or kale, French marigolds are doing quiet pest work at no cost to you. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, give them full sun, thin to 8 to 10 inches, and skip the high nitrogen fertilizer. Good for Usta zones 3 through 11. Flower number 5, nasturtiums. Nasturtiums get written off as old-fashioned filler, but they're actually one of the more clever plants you can grow, and they're almost uniquely suited to the hot, dry, poor soil spots that give most gardeners trouble. In rich soil, nasturtiums produce huge, attractive leaves and very few flowers. In lean soil, the kind your hostas would reject, they produce compact plants covered edge to edge in blooms. Stress triggers the reproductive drive, and the plant shifts its energy to seed production. You're not neglecting this plant, you're speaking its language. In zones 7 through 10, full summer sun will scorch the foliage, so morning sun with afternoon shade works better. In zones 3 through 6, full sun is fine. Jewel mix is the classic choice, compact mounding plants in gold, orange, scarlet, and cream that germinate in 7 to 10 days. Alaska has cream and green variegated foliage that stays attractive even when blooming slows, and it's excellent in containers. For trailing types, tall climbing mix and Spitfire run 3 to 4 feet and are worth giving a trellis. Every part of this plant is edible, by the way. The flowers have a peppery, slightly sweet flavor, the leaves taste like mild watercress, and the unripe seed pods can be pickled much like capers. Good for USDA, zones 3 through 10, with the shade note in warmer areas. Flower number 6, calendula. If you garden in zones 3 through 6, August is the right moment to direct sow calendula for a run of fall blooms that lasts right up to hard frost. In warmer zones 7 through 10, an August sowing sets you up for a late fall and early winter show, since calendula is one of the few annual flowers that actually prefers cooler weather to bloom well. Warm August soil pushes germination fast, and the cooling temperatures of October and November push blooming into overdrive. Calendula germinates in 5 to 10 days, one of the quickest on this whole list. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, thin to about 10 inches apart, and step back, because this plant doesn't ask for much. Resina has the strongest concentration of the compounds gardeners prize this flower for, and it's popular for homemade skin preparations. Pacific Beauty Mix gives you large, fully double blooms in cream, apricot, yellow, orange, and gold, outstanding as a cut flower. Indian Prince is a deep orange variety with a dark chocolate center that looks striking against autumn foliage. The sticky resin on the stems physically traps aphids and whiteflies, so calendula acts almost like a living trap crop, pulling pest pressure away from your vegetables. Native bees and beneficial hoverflies are drawn right to it. Good for USDA zones 3 through 9 for an August sowing, and if you're in zone 10, wait until September. If any of this is landing with you, this is exactly the kind of thing we cover in the Golden Vault Garden Plant Care Handbook, our full companion guide with sowing charts, zone maps, and troubleshooting for every plant we cover on this channel. There's a link in the description if you want it sitting on your shelf. Now, back to the list. Flower number 7, sweet alyssum. Sweet alyssum fell out of fashion during the era of big showy blooms. And that's been a quiet loss for American gardens, because this small flower thrives under exactly the conditions you'll hit in late summer. Seeds germinate in warm soil within 7 to 14 days. The plant builds a modest root system through the first few weeks after sowing, and when October and November bring cooler temperatures, sweet alyssum doesn't slow down, it takes off. Sow in August, and you're preloading your fall garden with fragrance and ground cover in one step. The seed is tiny, so you scatter it rather than pressing it in. Broadcast it over a prepared bed, press lightly with your palm, water gently, and don't cover it with soil, since alyssum needs light to germinate. Thin to 6 inches once established. Carpet of snow is the classic, pure white with a honey scent, spreading low and dense. Royal carpet is a deep violet purple, striking planted near white or orange flowers. The Easter bonnet series holds up especially well in summer heat, which matters for an August sowing. The nectar production here is disproportionate to how small the flower is, and it specifically draws parasitic wasps and hoverflies, both of which prey on aphids and caterpillar eggs. A border of sweet alyssum is pest management for the cost of a seed packet and 30 minutes of your afternoon. Good for USDA zones 3 through 10. Flower number 8, borage. Of everything on this list, borage is probably the one fewest gardeners have actually grown from seed, and that's a real missed opportunity. Borage is a Mediterranean native, built for dry, hot, poor soil, and when you sow it in August and go easy on the watering, the root system pushes deep in search of moisture, building genuine resilience. By the time it starts producing its star-shaped flowers in late summer, this is a plant that shrugs off heat, drought, and most pests. The color on standard Borage officinalis is one of the truest blues you'll find in a late summer garden, and it photographs beautifully. Sow seeds a ½ inch deep, about 12 inches apart, and expect germination in 7 to 14 days. Thin to 18 inches, since borage spreads to about 2 feet wide and needs the air circulation, or you'll see powdery mildew on the lower leaves. Standard Borage officinalis is excellent. Alba is a slightly more compact white-flowered form, and Bill Archer produces larger individual flowers with richer color. Beekeepers have known for centuries that each borage flower refills its nectar every 2 minutes, making it a nectar source that restocks itself all day long, right at the point in the season when many earlier flowers have already finished. It's also edible, with a mild cucumber flavor that's lovely floated in a glass of water or added to a salad. Good for USDA, zones 2 through 11. Flower number 9, California poppies. This one is different from everything else on the list, so it's worth understanding before we talk varieties. Eschscholtzia californica is a true native plant of the western half of North America, which means it co-evolved with the soils and seasons there over millions of years. It doesn't need your management, it needs your permission. Your entire job is to sow it and leave it alone. It hates being transplanted. The taproot forms almost immediately after germination, and any disturbance, even the gentle act of moving a nursery seedling, can set the plant back badly or kill it outright. When you see California poppies in a garden center cell pack, you're looking at an already stressed plant. The seed packet is always the right tool here. An August sowing works because the seed germinates in warm soil and then experiences the natural cooling of late summer, which triggers flowering. In zones 3 through 7, an August sowing gives you blooms from late October through first frost. In zones 8 through 10, the plant may go semi-dormant through the last hot weeks and then bloom heavily once November arrives. And in zones 9 and 10, it can bloom right through winter. Scatter the seed over prepared soil, press it lightly into contact with the earth, and don't cover it, since it needs light to germinate. Thin to 6 inches once seedlings are established. Thai silk gives you fully double, silk-textured flowers in orange, red, pink, white, and cream. Mission Bells includes unusual shades of rose, salmon, and scarlet. Ivory Castle is a pure white that glows against dark fall foliage. Here's the financial upside too. One mature plant produces dozens of seed pods with 20 to 30 seeds each, so one well-established plant gives you enough seed for a 50-foot bed next year. Buy the seed once, and you likely never buy it again. Good for USDA zones 3 through 10. Flower number 10, bachelor's buttons. Centaurea cyanus is one of the more cold-tolerant annuals you can grow, and that tolerance stretches the bloom window well past what most flowers can manage, including handling a light fall frost without any trouble. That makes it a smart choice for gardeners in zones 3 through 5, who are always racing the calendar. The true blue of a classic bachelor's button is one of the most requested colors in a cutting garden, and genuinely one of the hardest to find among annuals. Sow in August, and you're setting yourself up for cut flowers from October onward, right when blue in a vase becomes hard to come by. Blue Boy is the original tall type, 24 to 30 inches, intensely blue, and excellent as a cut stem. The Boy series also comes in white, pink, red, and deep burgundy for a mixed palette. Black Ball is a dark maroon so deep it reads almost black, dramatic in a fall border. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, expect germination in 7 to 14 days in warm August ground. Skip the high nitrogen, thin to 9 to 12 inches, and deadhead regularly. A bachelor's button that goes to seed stops producing new flowers, so keeping it cut extends your season more than almost anything else you can do. Good for Usta zones 3 through 9 for a summer sowing. Flower number 11, larkspur. This one surprises people most, since larkspur has a reputation as a spring or fall flower. That reputation is partly earned, but there's a specific approach that makes August sowing work. And once you understand the biology, it makes complete sense. Larkspur seed germinates best after a period of cool, moist conditions. Sow it in early spring, and you have to manufacture those conditions yourself. Sow it in late August, and nature does that work for you. The seed goes into warm soil, experiences the gradual cooling of late summer and fall, and germinates in the cool of October and November, building a root system through autumn before winter arrives. In zones 6 through 9, those plants overwinter and bloom spectacularly in early spring. In zones 3 through 5, an August sowing gives you fall germination and early summer blooms the following year. The return is delayed, but the tall spire habit of larkspur, reaching 3 to 4 feet, is worth the patience. Giant Imperial produces fully double flowers on tall stems in deep blue, lavender, white, pink, and salmon, exceptional as cut flowers. QIS is bred specifically for cut flower production, with straight, strong stems. Sow directly on the surface or no deeper than 1/8 of an inch, since larkspur is sensitive to burial, and never transplant it, since the taproot forms fast and moving it is almost always fatal. Skip the fertilizer here. Lean soil and full sun are the entire formula. Good for Usta zones 3 through 9 for an August sowing. Flower number 12, celosia. Celosia is one of the most underused flowers on this list, and that's a shame, because almost nothing else brings this kind of texture to a fall garden. The plumed types look like flames, the crested types look almost like coral, and both hold their color and shape for weeks without fading, even as the weather cools. Celosia loves heat, which makes it a natural fit for an August sowing, since it will germinate faster in warm soil than it ever would in a cool spring bed. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth and expect germination in 8 to 12 days, thin to 8 to 12 inches depending on variety. The Fresh Look series gives you compact plumed plants in red, yellow, and gold that hold their shape in the garden all season. Chief Mix is the classic crested type, with wide velvety blooms in deep red, pink, and gold. Celosia dries beautifully too, so if you like arranging flowers indoors, this is one of the easiest ones to hang and dry for a winter arrangement. Avoid heavy feeding, since rich soil produces soft, floppy growth that's more prone to rot. Good for Usta zones 2 through 11 as a summer annual. Flower number 13, gomphrena. Gomphrena is one of the most drought-tolerant flowers you can put in the ground, and an August sowing plays directly to its strengths. The round, clover-like blooms come in a papery texture that holds its shape and color long after cutting, which is why florists prize it for dried arrangements. It thrives in the exact conditions that stress out most other flowers, full baking sun and soil that dries out between waterings. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, expect germination in 10 to 14 days, and thin to 8 to 10 inches. QIS series gives you a tidy, uniform habit in purple, red, white, and pink, all around 18 inches tall. Fireworks is a larger, more dramatic type that can reach 3 feet, with hot pink blooms tipped in gold. Gomphrena is essentially indifferent to summer heat, and it keeps blooming right through the last hot weeks of late summer without any fuss, then carries that same show straight into November. If you've ever struggled to keep cut flowers alive in a vase, this is the forgiving one to start with. Good for Usta zones 2 through 11 as a summer annual. Flower number 14, cleome. Cleome, sometimes called spider flower, is a dramatic, tall-growing annual that most gardeners overlook simply because they've never seen it grown well. An August sowing gives you a plant that reaches its full height, often 4 to 5 feet, right as fall arrives, with airy, spidery blooms in pink, white, and purple, that seem to float above the foliage. It self-sows readily, so one good planting can give you volunteers for years afterward if you let a few seed heads mature. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth and expect germination in 10 to 14 days, a bit slower than some others on this list, so be patient and keep the soil consistently moist. Thin to 18 to 24 inches, since cleome needs room to reach its full size. Señorita Rosalita is a newer, thornless variety that blooms without setting seed, which means it puts all its energy into flowers rather than seed production, giving you a longer, fuller bloom season. Queen Series is the traditional tall type, in cherry, rose, and white. Cleome also draws hummingbirds and night-flying moths, making it one of the better choices if you want activity in the garden at dusk. Good for USDA zones 3 through 10. Flower number 15, strawflower. Strawflower earns its name honestly. The petals have a dry, papery texture even while the flower is still fresh on the plant, which is exactly why it's one of the best everlasting flowers you can grow for drying. An August sowing gives you a plant that blooms hard through the last warm weeks of the season and keeps going until frost. Sow at a 1/4 inch depth, expect germination in 7 to 14 days, and thin to 12 inches. Dragon Hill gives you fully double blooms in a mix of gold, orange, pink, and red on plants around 2 feet tall. Silvery Rose is a softer pastel variety that looks lovely mixed with deeper colored blooms. If you want dried flowers for the winter, cut strawflower just before the center of the bloom fully opens, strip the leaves, and hang the stems upside down in a dry, dark space for 2 to 3 weeks. The color barely fades at all, which is rare among cut and dried flowers, and a jar of them on a windowsill in January is a nice reminder that the garden is coming back. Good for USDA zones 2 through 11 as a summer annual. Before we close out, 5 rapid-fire rules that apply across every flower on this list, because the difference between an August sowing that thrives and one that disappoints almost always comes down to one of these. Rule 1. Water in right after sowing, and keep the top inch consistently moist until seedlings appear. That window is the critical period, and after that, most of this list is far more forgiving than you'd expect. Rule 2. Don't sow too deep. With the exception of sunflowers, nearly everything on this list wants a 1/4 inch of depth or less, and California poppies, sweet alyssum, and larkspur want surface contact only. Deeper is not safer. Deeper usually just doesn't work. Rule 3. Thin your seedlings, even though it feels wrong to pull out a plant you worked to grow. Crowded seedlings compete for resources, shade each other, and invite fungal problems. Thinning to the right spacing is the difference between a flower bed and a disappointment. Rule 4. Default to not fertilizing unless the specific plant calls for it. Zinnias and sunflowers appreciate a mid-season feeding, but nearly everything else on this list performs better in lean conditions, and high nitrogen pushes leaves at the expense of flowers. Rule 5. Trust the process. An August sowing feels backwards because the sun is high and the soil is dry by afternoon, but that warm soil is exactly what most of these seeds have been waiting for. Keep the germination zone moist, sow at the right depth, and let the season do the rest. These flowers have been reproducing in summer conditions for a lot longer than any of us have been gardening. If you're just getting started, pick 3. For instant color, zinnias and marigolds. For the pollinator garden, borage, calendula, and sweet alyssum. For low maintenance, drought-tolerant beauty, nasturtiums, California poppies, and cosmos. Before you go, drop a comment and tell me what state or country you're gardening in, and which of these 15 flowers you're trying first. I read every single one, and it's genuinely one of my favorite parts of making these videos. If you found this useful, send it to one gardener in your life, not a whole group, just one person who'd get real value out of it. And if you're new here, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of specific, practical gardening information this channel is built around, every single week. That's Golden Vault Garden. Go sow something. Your fall garden is waiting for you.